Okay, we'll call the July 7th meeting, block on the time, followed by. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Alexander. Here. Councilmember Brannan. Here. Councilmember Brinker. Councilmember Conklin.
Here.
Councilmember Missouri.
Here.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Here.
Mayor Law.
Here. Approval of the June 16th regular meeting minutes.
I second.
Motion floor and second. Any questions or comments on the motion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Alexander. Yes. Councilmember Brannan. Yes. Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Law.
Yes. Public comments or requests. Any comments from residents and city taxpayers? State your name and where you live.
Niles Manzares, 1354 Renova Road, Hillhall, Pennsylvania. I have some concerns about losing access to the airport. Starting back in May 27th, I wrote a letter to the city solicitor having him confirm that everything on my side has been completed and there's nothing that I can do at this time. We're waiting on the FAA. And I had brought this up before in another meeting. And he corresponded me back and he said, "You're absolutely right. Everything on your side is up to date. And we're just waiting on the FAA for a response from that." On almost a weekly basis, I would check in with Mr. Hauser's office and make sure that that was the situation because I didn't want to be blamed on holding up this process of getting an agreement through the banks. Sometime in the midst of that, I talked to a couple of the council members that on the airport committee, and we tried to set up a meeting that we could discuss some things. I had been talking to the FAA and had some suggestions that might make the thing go better, and suggested to Mr. Stevenson that maybe we could meet at my hangar, but due to scheduling problems and vacations, we hadn't been able to do that yet. But he graciously accepted that offer, but from a scheduling standpoint, we just didn't get to that. On July 3rd, I got a registered letter from the city manager. And it said, basically, if the city doesn't have a signed contract in hand by June 30th, that we'd be denied, or I'd be denied access to the airport. So immediately upon receiving that registered letter, and that was in the afternoon by the time it returned to the post office where I could pick it up and sign for it. I called Mr. Hauser's office and they were closed for the holiday already. So this morning, which is the first business day after the holiday weekend, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I called Mr. Hauser's office, talked to the secretary, discussed what my concern was, and she said that he would get back to me when he was able, and I still haven't heard anything. What I'm asking is, I think that I should have a fair amount of time to be able to look at the contract. I have the contract has changed again. I have some questions that I would like clarified, and the city solicitor could do that. I don't have to go to my own lawyer, but I have several things that need to be clarified because I don't understand what they really mean. And there's no way that I can sign a contract that was 3 or 4 days ago or 7 days ago. So the deadline is passed and I want more time to deal with it. I think a reasonable time, I don't know what a reasonable amount of time to review that is, but I believe there should be extra time.
A clarification, Mr. Manzora said the letter that he received, the certified letter, was from the city manager. It was not, it's from the city solicitor. In fact, I only recently got a copy of the one that was sent. It's not
I'm
from
sorry,
me,
I
nor signed by
misread
me.
that.
I have an email from Justin Hauser that those were sent out earlier in the month. And that individuals were given until June 30th. And as of June 30th, and he is reporting on June 27th, he had no signed agreements. He did have signature cards from Mr. Kerr and Cecilia Larson. So they were in people's post office boxes before June 27th, because we got 2 signature cards returned by that time. So Mr. Kerr asked for one in a PDF format, which was sent to him. They're substantially unchanged from what you saw previously. And you were a party to the conversation with the FAA and PennDOT Bureau of Aviation, at which you had the opportunity to ask any question that you wanted. Mr. Stevenson was there and Councilmember Mazzordi, and they can comment further on any other requests or conversation that you'd like to have.
But you should have a signed card from the registered mail that I got. And that was on the 3rd, which is 3 days past the deadline.
That card wouldn't go to me, that would go to the city solicitor.
Solicitor,
The solicitor reported that this gentleman here, as well as Mr. Larson, had returned their cards that they had received their mail. So not only had they received it, but the card had time to come back through the mail to the city.
My card received on the 3rd, and you can verify that with. I have technical questions on this, which I don't want to get
Yeah,
the
this,
council involved with the technical questions stuff. But there is
So
some
way I can answer those questions.
there is considerable concerns that I have that have changed in the agreement.
any changes from what you originally saw are those that were requested by the FAA
So
itself.
that's fine. I should have a chance to either discuss it with my attorney or the city's attorney and have that explained to me before I sign a 16-page contract that I don't necessarily understand.
I'm not sure it's 16 pages. However, May 14th, the city did receive a letter, which you received as well, a copy of. The city has until July 14th, which is this Friday, to notify the FAA whether you have entered into those agreements or whether the city will be foregoing the offer to permit through the fence.
Pretty hard to sign an agreement when you don't have to.
Yeah, somebody say you look like you're.
Yeah, here's my thoughts. That you can have as much time as you like.
I'm not saying I won't sign it.
You can have as much time as you like. In my mind, you're better off signing it and challenging it later than you have through the fence, because in my mind, I don't know what the subcommittee feels like, but I will tell you that I have no desire to give anybody through the fence agreement that doesn't have a signed deal with us. And you have as much time as you want to look it over. You're just not gonna get through the fence until that's done. But that's just my
No, I'm
opinion.
not saying.
That's just
I'm
where
not
I
saying
would
that I wouldn't
stand.
sign it. All I'm saying is, if the deadline is the 30th of June and I didn't receive it till the 3rd of July, and then that was a holiday weekend that brings us to the 7th, that's an unrealistic expectation that I can sign something that I never had. Does that seem reasonable?
No, I understand, you didn't pick your mail up, but do we have, can you recall, is there provisions in the system, in the letters, in the agreement things, for if somebody decides in September they will participate in through the fence, even though it's after our deadline, we're gonna tell FAA, these are the people as of July 14th that did or did not. But are there provisions for later on if somebody decides they want a through a fence agreement in, September or October.
Yeah.
So if you miss that deadline, unfortunately, you may be able to hurry up and say, yeah, I'm in before July 14th, before we answer. It's just my opinion too, and I'm not a legalese guy.
Yeah, and
So-
I had some other
so-
simple legal questions that
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Mr. Hauser about, or my lawyer, and say, what does this really mean?
I don't know if there's a penalty for being late with it, but they needed to have some type of deadline for delays. So maybe you could still put it in if you want, and if not, we're gonna send the report in one way or the other.
I
You're
will,
either on board or you're not on board, so.
I will point out exactly what Steve said. You could enter into the agreement in September or October or next year. You just won't have access until you've entered into the agreement. The same is true, like Mr. Williamson has a commercial or a residential through the fence in his hands right now. If one day he were to decide to open a business in that, it would need to convert from residential to commercial. That would be done at the time that that happened. It wouldn't stop anything from being changed later on, for the type of use or for someone to decide to start. To go with the option of getting through the fence access to the airport. Also, I would point out, when you contact the city solicitor, the city's taxpayers pay for that. And if you have legal questions, those should probably be something you would direct to your own solicitor. The city solicitor is not your solicitor. So when you ask questions that normally you would ask to your own lawyer, but ask them to the solicitor instead, all of council, which is the 8,900 people who actually pay taxes in the city, are paying that bill for you. So if you do have questions, it may be best to go to your lawyer first and then have your lawyer get clarification from the solicitor to kind of slim down the time that the city gets billed.
Really doesn't seem like you want us to sign the agreement.
You have one that came with a letter that requested that you sign it. The city has worked diligently for at least 2 years to get the through the fence entities to sign it. The city participated in many conversations with the through the fence entities, including most recently with the FAA and Bureau of Aviation. I think the FAA and Bureau made it absolutely clear where their stance is. The city is offering you the opportunity for through the fence access. As the FAA said, the city is not required to offer that. It is being offered. So I don't know how that can be interpreted as we don't want you to have access when we aren't required to offer you access.
Okay,
But you have
we
been.
can't say we've held it, or I've held it up for 2 years when I just finally received this on the 3rd.
What,
I don't know if there's any more to
So
say.
when did everyone else receive their letters? Like with I'm assuming they were all mailed out the same day.
Right.
Which was what day?
Uh,
16th, 2025.
So it
For
took,
this letter.
so then it took that much longer for you personally to get your letter than everyone else. I'm just trying to understand the time frame here.
I have, I still have the envelope, but the card got sent back to the city solicitor. And that was mailed out on the 2nd. And I received it the 3rd. And I confirmed that with the
So
secretary.
why didn't you get it when everyone else got
I
it?
have no idea, but because everybody else got this, and I didn't get anything at all, and I called Mr. Hauser's office, and she said it was sent out on the 2nd. And I received it on the 3rd and sent that back, and that's documented through.
she told you it was sent out on the 2nd.
She did.
It wasn't sent overnight or next day.
Well, Lockhaven, it happens in one day.
So you're saying the secretary told you went out on the 2nd, but everyone else's went out on the 16th?
I have no idea when the others went out, I just didn't get one. Everybody was saying, hey, this deadline's coming up, and I'm going, well, shit, I haven't gotten anything.
Yeah, because the actual example that I have here, that I printed out, is the one for Niles Seaplane Base LLC dated June 16th, 2025.
Okay, but I got it, I have certified letter.
I understand when you picked it up.
Yes.
Well, since we're already approaching this topic, why don't we continue with any other update you have on this later in the agenda? Take care of it.
The only other update is the city did receive information from the FAA that the construction, safety and phasing plan for the fencing and gates project of William Piper and the associated men and equipment are submitted and approved for FAA action. And so that is a grant that the city will be able to utilize to put in additional fencing to secure the airport and gates.
So I feel like something's unresolved, so what I think what I want to do is kind of summarize where we're at then. If I understand, and please, any council or the manager, jump in and correct me. Those people who don't have a signed agreement won't have access until we have their signed agreement. They don't have to sign it right now, that's up to them, we're not gonna keep them from signing it later if they want. But until they do, when will that cut off access till then?
We have to tell July 14th, the FAA that they do or do not have access.
Okay.
And so, those who have returned it before the letter is sent on July 14th, which is
So
Friday.
as of July 14th, anyone who does not have a signed agreement with us won't have access until they do sign the agreement. Wanted to clarify that, that's where it's at.
Okay, and then that's basically what I was asking for, is to have some time to look at it, to properly review it.
Well, it sounds to me like you have till July 14th.
Okay, no,
Get taken
that
care of.
is, that's a good
Or you
response
can
of what I
wait.
was looking to get.
Or you can wait and not have access for a while till you get whatever resolve you wanna get
Right.
resolved, but as
I
of
now
now, fine.
understand that.
Okay,
So, but that is what I was asking for, is some time to review it. And,
Must be a story,
Red.
the one that already came through.
Yeah.
until you clarified that, we didn't have.
well, that's what
that.
I'm, yeah, I wanna
I
make sure
appreciate
that's, so the agree note, that's what it is, okay?
Okay.
So we'll be, so we've taken care of item H
Yes, sir.
already, okay? Any other comments from city residents or city taxpayers? All right, we'll move on to unfinished business. No, we aren't moving on there. We're gonna go to the annual request for Lock Haven Regatta Foundation, second reading.
This is the second reading of the Lock Haven Labor Day Regatta request. This is for the street closure, August 28th through September 2nd. Also Henderson Street from Water Street to Jordan's Alley. And this is just a repeat from the request. This is the second reading of the request that's made. This includes picnic tables, free parking on Saturday. And I'll work with them with Public Works as well.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
For the second request.
Second.
Second reading is moved and second. Any questions or comments on that motion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Brandon.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
yes,
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Do we have any other requests?
I have none, Your Honor.
Okay, now we'll move to unfinished business. 5A, discussion regarding the termination of future CDBG home and CSBG funding.
HR 1, which is called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, has been adopted by the US House and then the US Senate with amendments, and is currently back in front of the House. When I wrote this, has been signed by the president now. HR 1 is the budget for the federal fiscal year 2026, which begins October 25th or October 1st of this year and ends September 30th, 2026. As signed by the president, it was proposed and adopted that all federal funding for community development block grant, home grant, and community service block grant may be eliminated or terminated because of cuts to HUD funding. That will make the 2025 CDBG potentially the final time that council will be discussing this federal funding to be distributed to the benefit of the city's residents. For decades, literally, the city has benefited annually by having the federal taxes paid by our residents returned to them, currently about $300,000 worth a year through the CDBG program. Those funds enable our local government to invest in community development, infrastructure, and housing in a way that benefits low and moderate income residents. Over the decades, the city has used the funds to invest millions of dollars into water and sewer infrastructure, sewer and stormwater, and increase the quality of life of our residents through improvements to parks and public spaces, all of which makes our community more attractive to business and development, which results in better employment and lower poverty. Take, for example, 10 years ago, the city's poverty rate was 40.7%, and today it is 25%. Quality of life investments by this council and its predecessors over the decades have had a dramatic impact on the community's well-being. Along with the elimination of CDBG, the Home Investment Partnership Program is also considered for elimination. The program has provided over $500,000 worth of home improvements to low to moderate income households over just the last few years. In all, more than $1 million has been invested in numerous homes of our neighbors and our friends throughout the community to make their homes more economically affordable for them to retain. Coupling the loss in infrastructure and development dollars, federal dollars for service are also proposed for elimination beginning October 1st, 2025. For our community, STEP is the community action agency that administers the CSBG grants for the benefit of our residents. Those include job training and employment assistance, food and nutrition programs like Meals on Wheels, housing assistance and homelessness prevention, emergency utility assistance, disaster relief, childcare, financial literacy, transportation assistance for the elderly and those in need, and even the senior center. The only program that appears not to be impacted that STEP administers is Head Start. In all, you're talking about decades worth of residents used to at least $300,000 worth of investments into streets, stormwater, water, sewer, and parks. And that expectation is laid out in the city's comprehensive plan, where our residents have allocated what they value most for investments of money. One of the largest ways that those investments have been made possible is through the return of federal funding to the local level.
I'm not certain that people truly understood. Because this is it's devastating. I still don't think they'll really get it until things aren't getting done. Because when you lose $300,000, things start not getting done. And it's all stuff they expect. Believe me, they expect it to be done. So very sad that this day came this way. Comments from council?
I said it's just insanity. I don't know. I mean, we're not the only community this size that's gonna be affected by it.
Oh,
Every community across this Commonwealth is gonna be affected. And it just boggles my mind.
one of the most effective funding sources, or I can't say that there aren't things out there you say, oh, but this was about infrastructure that everybody needs. And I have no idea what it might make a little sense to me if our debt and our deficit were being reduced, but that's not happening. So that makes no sense.
And it's tax dollars that everybody in the city and the county is
Yeah.
walking in money to come back to us to spend as we supposedly serve us.
Yeah.
But to us, it's a lifeblood.
Yeah.
To have these programs to use that.
Yes. What else? A comment back here in the morning.
As a city taxpayer, when people start complaining about this, can we make it known why these things are not happening? Like, can we be transparent and say, You voted for this?
It's easy to show what funded that activity in the past, and so when it's not happening, we're gonna have to show. It came from this, they took it away. You know, and so, sorry, unless you want us to jack the tax, property taxes up here considerably. It is what it is.
That makes it, so people can't live here because they can't afford the property taxes and then
Well, yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
it's a horrible cycle to begin.
Yes. And even those who can, you know, as quality of life drops, because you can't afford to pave the streets, you can't do this, those people who can afford will move out because it's not. And we walked in a small community like this, and as all the small communities surrounding us, I mean, they're gonna be affected too. They get county CDBG dollars that have replaced roads or what have you to help offset things and make quality of life there. You're constantly walking this fine line of trying to keep it affordable to be here, but keeping the quality of life such that they want to be here. And I'm not certain people realize how much $300,000 is gonna mean to the city.
Well,
Devastating.
I will, a lot of people say, it's free money and the money isn't really free. It's not. The average Pennsylvanian taxpayer pays $12,000 a year in federal taxes. There are very few ways that a local resident can see a return on the taxes that they pay to the federal government. We don't normally have, military people stopping by to, do house repairs. So, there's a lot of things you pay for the federal government to do. Very few of those things return to you at a local level. CDBG, home, community service grants, those were all ways that your federal dollars did make it back into your local community, which is one of the reasons that they were so heavily valued at a local level by members of council.
So what's disappointing about this is they don't have the money to fund these important things, but yet they have a $77,000 fence within a fence, which makes no sense. Take that money and put it towards these programs.
They had the money, they just chose to give it to as tax breaks to people who really need it. Anyways, wallowing in self-pity, so we'll move on. 5B, 2025, review community development block grant projects, the ones that are still funded for now. Welcome back.
Thank you. I wish it was on better terms. Yes, 2025 is still federally funded. The city's allocation is $307,438. If you subtract the administration from CDCOG as well as the city of Lock Haven, that leaves $257,438 to go towards an eligible project, which have been laid out before you. First project would be the Canna Park improvements. Original OPC has a cost of $150,000. Once you include $4,000 for the environmental review, which is subject to the NEPA with the federal red tape that comes with CDBG, that charges $4,000, as well as the Davis-Bacon and related acts that are required through the CDBG. That charges $5,500, which brings the project cost to $159,500. For the rehabilitation, they construct a new pickleball courts and basketball courts to enhance the court play for residents. The park restroom will also see improvements to meet ADA requirements, and each amenity in the park will be connected to an ADA compliant fresh stone walking path. There is a DCNR application that has been submitted as well, and the eligibility through that is the citywide LMI benefits. Do you want me to pause between each of them or just kind of read down through?
Go ahead.
Okay. The next project is the 4th Street improvements for a project cost of $144,544, including the environmental review fee as well as the Davis-Bacon related acts. It brings the total project cost to $152,444 for the repavement of North 4th Street from Railroad Street to the Railroad Row to West Church Street and West Church Street to West Water Street. Again, that would be a citywide LMI benefit. Then there is the project summary that came in from Citizens Hose number 5 for the bay floor repairs. a CDBG ask of $18,240. Once we include the environmental review as well as the Davis-Bacon and related act requirement charges, the total project cost comes to $27,740, which include an upgrade to the apparatus floor bay constructed in 1992 that is beginning to deteriorate, and the drains that have sank in the floor and are no longer even with the floor, causing a safety concern. This again would be a citywide LMI benefit. The first due response is the city of Lock Haven from the fire company, even though they do benefit Clinton County as well. Is there anything further that you'd like to add to the project?
No, as many of you are aware, we try to be as community minded as we can be. We encourage the different groups to use the facilities that's used for elections. Little League uses it, softball uses it. We have groups from the school that use it, and other businesses for CPR trainings and stuff like that. So we want to make sure we're providing a safe venue for them to do these trainings in. We don't charge them, we don't ask them for any money for doing it. It's just a benefit. We benefit from everything that the city does for us. So we feel that we should be doing the same thing to the different groups that would like to use the facilities. But it's just to make sure that it's a safe area for them, that they're not tripping, falling, or doing anything.
So the next project was submitted from the Lock Haven EMS. So this is an EMS generator project. The ask was for $29,810, including the environmental review and the Davis-Bacon and related acts. The total project cost comes to $39,310. This is for the purchase and installation of a generator to be connected to the existing natural gas or LP fuel supply and activate within seconds if a power failure. And that will ensure that the EMS will be able to operate during times of power outages. And again, that would be a citywide benefit with the first due response being the city of Lock Haven. Is there anyone from EMS? I apologize.
Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you. So we've been upgrading our electrical service there for the last 5 years of preparation for this, with the upgrade to the 400 amp service and also the transfer switch that was a little over $18,000 in preparation for the last phase would obviously be the generator. We are on the county's roster for a fallout shelter. If there's an issue at the school at Robb, we are the facility that's going to assume and gather those children, teachers, whatever, police. So we are the hub and put there for EMS reasons, but that facility is also registered as fallout shelter for anybody that needs to come and establish a safe haven.
The next project is the North 3rd Street improvements. The OPC is $108,213, including the environmental review and the Davis-Bacon and related acts. Total project cost comes to $116,113 to reconstruct North 3rd Street from Mary's Alley to West Water Street. This would be a citywide LMI benefit. And the final project is the Race Street improvements, with the opinion of probable construction cost of $52,975, including the environmental review and the Davis-Bacon related acts. Total project cost comes to $60,075 for the repavement of Race Street from East Main Street to East Water Street. Upon review, the primary users would be the apartment complex or the residential users, which would require a demographic survey for this to be qualified as an eligible CDBG project, as 51% or more have to be under the Section 8 home limits as LMI. So those are the projects, a little bit more than previously presented. Tonight is the formal project selection by City Council to keep with the CDBG project schedule. The final public hearing notice is set currently to run in the Lock Haven Express on July 14th, with a final public hearing of August 4th. At 7 p.m. and then a resolution to submit the application to the Department of Community and Economic Development on August 18th for the application submittal date of October 31st of 2025.
What action do you need to?
What project you would formally, project or projects you would formally like to select for the 2025 CDBG funding?
Questions? Yes, sir. For our company and the EMS, are you putting any money into this, like a share type cost? And if so, what is it? Are we paying at you, or are you asking us for the total cost of the project?
The fire company has allocated $9,000 out of the general fund for this project.
So
On top of the 18,
Yes.
So half, pretty much half, other than the
Right.
environmental review and Davis Bacon's. Okay, what about EMS?
Yeah, so we've been ramping up the last couple of years with those preparations, so we still have the concrete pad installed, the gas line installed, and then the electrical. So that truly was the cost of just the generator itself. All the other expenses, permits and all that would come right from our general fund as well.
You have gas in the building now?
The gas is actually right outside, Steve, where the pad's gonna go for the location of the generator, as long as it meets compliance of setbacks.
Okay, that was one question. All right, continue. Yes, sir. The Davis Bacon, and this is for Angie, how comes Davis Bacon's only charging less than $4,000 for bigger paving projects, but $5,500 for a generator and $5,500 for a flooring job? Why is there such a disparity on the big money jobs and not, and even $5,500 for a big playground? But those paving jobs,
So the Davis Bacon related act, charges are based off of a $12,000, or yeah, 12,000, I'm sorry, $1,200 flat rate plus $200 per week of compliance that payrolls or federal regulations would be required to ensure compliance with the CDBG program. So based off of the project summary that may have been submitted by the fire company or EMS, or going along with some of the different paving projects, depending upon how long it was estimated that construction would last, is why the charges are fluctuating.
okay, so I can't see installing a generator more than a day, maybe two. And I can't see it for more than a couple days. These other ones, really, you could pave the street, and these are only a couple walks. If they really got in there, I can't see more than a day or two paving also. So, but the value in the dollar amount figures into the formula. So could we ask you to redo those figures or readjust or go back and look at them again and see why there's such a disparity between them?
Yeah, I can recalculate the Davis Bacon and related act charges, try and work through, maybe speaking with EMS or fire company, because that was just kind of what was on their project summary that, and I don't remember which one, I apologize, but someone had wrote like 6 months time span for construction. So that's what we're taking to calculate those charges. But I can have better communication between the city as well as the EMS and them, and then get a better.
Yeah,
more
because if we
accurate-
could save a few $1,000, that's more we can put to something else. We did pay 4th Street a few years back, and the university came along and dug it up, money.
Right, this is not this part of it's on the other side of the tracks of this project is.
No, it
It
is.
says it's the Water Street.
What's that?
it does go to water.
It goes to
Right,
water.
that's what I'm saying, it is that section is on there. The
The
university dug it up by the railroad tracks.
Yeah, the whole way to the buildings, to Church Street, almost to Main, they dug it up,
Yeah, almost to me.
almost to Main, so they dug up 2 blocks of what we had just paid. So there's a.
It's from the railroad track right of way itself, I should say Railroad Street.
Okay.
From there to Water Street, and it does include the area that the university put in fiber network.
Right, but we hadn't done that paving in that area though. The paving was on the other side of the tracks.
We did that
That
recently.
ran up to Fairview and out Spring Street. That's when we did that paving. This is doing on the other side of the tracks.
That's where the
Not
university
water.
dug it.
What he's saying is,
We paved it, they dug it, right after we paved it. Cause that's when I growled, I wanted, from now on, whenever we paved, I wanted no more open trenching for at least a year or two after the paving was done, unless it's an emergency water, sewer, something that goes wrong. So what's what we encourage anybody that wanted gas to get their permits in now and ask for their gas license. Once we pave the street, we don't want them in there digging it all up again. Their money is at a premium. So we did pave across right beside the university over to Main Street. We didn't pave the last block for, and then they dug it. So I just wanted to throw some history out there about that. I have not good feelings about that section when we have so many other streets that we could pave too.
Anything else?
I'm looking around my notes. I'll give
Defer to
it
someone else.
somebody else.
If anyone else has
Yeah.
anything.
I mean, if fortunately, I don't have to make a final pick till August 4th. But from my mind, I think we have to pull the Hannah Park project off the table altogether.
I was.
I mean,
I was
as much as I
thinking
want to have that done, I don't see how that money's coming from anywhere to get it done.
Yeah.
And from a use standpoint, I think, I feel bad for the fact that, I was looking forward to seeing Hannah Park done, but I don't see how we can do it. I just don't see how.
Was that just phase one of Hannah Park? There's more than one phase.
Yes.
What's the possibility of DCNR kicking in there that doesn't have to do with walkthrough?
Well, we submitted a DCNR application this spring for, that amount for, I actually think it was 215,000. And they require 50-50 match, so then CDBG will come in to match that.
Yeah, so I'm thinking the same thing then, but we're at least getting half a match for half the amount of money by matching it. Where on a street paving, we really don't.
How we pay for the street paving.
They wait,
I suggest,
they do oil and chip, they do crack seal, they do everything else to maintain.
so I do understand what you're saying. Absolutely, and I understand the way all of council feels. In a staff meeting this morning about, potentially, this could be the last CDBG ever.
Right.
So what do you point at, 20 years from now to say this is what CDBG did? You can point to Hoberman, you can point to Parker Harmon, you can point to a lot of great investments that you all have made over the years. For both the bay floor and the EMS generator, it's certainly feasible for council to look at those as potential projects to be funded as donations from its capital projects fund. That would also make those projects come to fruition quicker. I'm not saying 100% of that money, but let's say 15,000 or 20,000, that would come into next year's budget play. So you would be able to disperse that money to those organizations next year instead of probably 2 years earliest.
How that funding cycles work.
Right. But you could allocate that through the general allotment. Also, truthfully, since 2018, 2019, every dollar that the city has gotten from liquid fuels has gone into Sunset Pines. The rest of the city has not seen any improvement from any of that money. To take a year off of Sunset Pines, you would be able to use your liquid fuels allocation next year to do fourth and third. They would not require, obviously, the environmental reviews that are required, things like that. So that brings the cost closer to the actual project cost that's listed. So that is something that you could do with liquid fuels. One thing that if CDBG is eliminated, you will not get the money to do ever again is that kind of substantial park improvement. And that is the last of the major parks that has not yet been improved. The play equipment itself is not insurable because of its age and does need work on the roadway, on the walkway, on the restrooms. It is heavily used right now, which is great. It would be used more, I think, if there wasn't an investment into it. Pickleball is very popular there.
Yeah, that portion of it gets used heavily, but the rest of the park.
So We have a lot of picnics. The playground equipment isn't attractive because of its age, but to make that safer. And updating the restrooms so they would be available to people throughout the pickleball season and then the rest of the year, make them ADA compliant. But that would be something that you could point at. There are options, I would say, for each of the items that are in there. You wouldn't have an option, for example, to find any other source of funding for Hannah Park other than DCNR. But you do have a second source of funding for each of the street projects in liquid fuels. So if you chose not to do them with CDBG, you can do them with liquid fuels.
So if you use different funding,
Right.
what timeline are we looking at for the paving?
You would be able to do fourth and third at a minimum next year. Because as soon as the liquid fuels
If
dispersed.
you can tell me that we can get those done next year, I would support shifting the focus. Because they're getting bad. There is.
So it's Ray Street, we paid Ray Street from Main into the old Piper building, but we did not pay the park on the water. And there's a lot of valves and utilities in the way, and they sort of put it off and kept kicking it. But it does need to be too, so I go that way different times and I've noticed it. Ray Street is pretty bad too.
But that, are we concerned that we won't meet the demographic survey in that area? And if we don't, let's say let's do Reed Street and Hannah Park. If we don't meet the demographic survey, what do we do?
Then that project's dropped off, sorry, G.
No.
I've never done a survey in this community just because we've always had like citywide LMI, we didn't have to, so I have nothing to compare it to. It's a short stretch, so there's only a couple residences there in that apartment building, so it's hard to say.
Well, so what made it require a demographic survey compared to the other places in the city? Because they have BMI.
Because it's such a short road, the primary service area is going to be those who primarily live around it. So there is the apartment complex as well as a few, structures that they're going to primarily use that road to go into their parking area, because I saw that, when I took a look at it, the apartment complex's parking lot is right off of that road. So they're gonna be the primary beneficiaries of the project. So, and I tried multiple different ways to try and rework it to see, if anybody within a block group would really be going down this road. And there really wasn't much that I could make a case to DCD that it would be even a block group wide benefit. So then in order to avoid DCD kicking the city's application, the primary beneficiaries would be those who primarily live right there. And that survey has to come in at 51% or more low to moderate income. If it does not, it is not an eligible CDBG project.
That is the main route though, for anybody that wants to go out for Main and out and down Water Street.
Yeah.
Towards the Island Road, the airport. Everybody seems to use that Great Street to connect from Main to Water. So that's one of the routes you just take whenever you're traveling in that direction or for that purpose, or go to the VFW.
Down that side.
There's a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of through
They take
traffic
that
that
route.
doesn't stop at the apartments there.
So if I could ask one other question about the apartment complex. So it's not the complex as a whole, it would be every individual that lives in that complex would determine the income level, correct? The
We
poverty
survey the
level.
households, yes.
Right, okay, so it's not like the owner of that property, it's.
No.
It's every
You do that.
resident, okay, because we might get close to there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Well, just another consideration, the Lockhaven Heating and Plumbing, that's a main entrance, main thoroughfare for their employees as well.
Listen, it's on Water Street. Right at the bridge.
And we can, oops, I'm running out of room to write.
I know we're trying to fit.
No, I
We're
appreciate
staying
it,
here, but-
fund everything. Yeah, I mean, as I looked at the list that Greg and Abby had given me, I tried to find every possible way to make anything a citywide benefit, so it would be an easy application, to get through. So I appreciate the input of things that are around, because unfortunately I was using Google Maps. I was not able to come up and kind of drive the area that I like to do before the meeting. So it's great input, and I mean, we can make a case for citywide benefits.
And I don't know how the details work, but in the number of public events we have on Main Street, the parades and the other events, that race street to Water and then up Water to First and then back out is a pretty common bypass for the city. Yeah. So I think it potentially does benefit with it.
It's also a primary street used by emergency services, whether it be EMS or the fire department for access to Water Street, the apartments, or anything that goes down the island. So
Mainly to the airport, you get a helipad, you know, there's a helipad.
if that helps you.
That is very helpful. So yeah, we can change that from a survey to citywide LMI. Just keeping in mind that if the project is funded and DCD does come back with questions or concerns, that we may have to pivot and hit up the survey.
Sharpen your pencil.
I will write the best application I can.
Are these bids, are the prices estimates from our staff or public works, or are they bid prices? Since two streets are right beside each other, mobilization shouldn't be paid twice because they're right within a block of each other, so that would possibly save you some money.
Yeah,
When you're paving two projects right next to each other.
sure, they're from Public Works Superintendent Jared Gist, based on the most recent paving, in Sunset Pines, so very recent numbers, and that mobilization and demobilization totally taken it into account. Especially if we bid them all at the same time helps as well in one single project, so.
And Race Street's not that far away. They can road you right down there.
Could I add one more thing, to Greg's point? In my experience with, nonprofits and going through this, the time waiting is sometimes a detriment. Especially with these projects, especially the generator and the use of your floor, it seems to be a recurring need. We've seen applications from you guys before, that it might be better to fund them more quickly. And that's just a sense, and we do have the liquid fuels as an option. I would like to see Hannah Park taken care of. We have had many of complaints about that park, especially the play equipment. We cannot replace that play equipment, it needs to be removed. So there just won't be play equipment there. It's just unsafe and really should not be there right now. We are looking towards the future with that. We have, like I said, the DCNR application. Casey and I are working with National Fitness Court again, to get a fitness court in the park as well. And with the full funding, like about $250,000, we can get the play equipment in there and finish the walking path, as well as the restroom, the pickleball courts, the basketball court, the fitness court, and it can be finished. So that's just my 2 cents. Certainly your decision.
Well, I certainly appreciate the work that Abby does and Casey as well, and the rest of the staff here that work with you on the project. I want to see Hannah Park done too. I was looking at the face value of the sheet after the descriptions, and I just thought it's got to be fixed. Now, I also said that I don't have to make my final call till August 4th. So I'm happy, I mean, I'll be happy to make the motion to move this along, but I'm just, there's gotta be an understanding of how we explain it going forward. I think we have.
Well, yeah, we do. Just one real quick,
No,
I agree with you, but we're we're also being put in a position of
Yeah,
having to make very hard choices ourselves. And
absolutely.
as much as we want to do other things, we may not be able to, we just don't know yet. Gerard, you were first.
My question is for the park. Is there, an escrow or a segregated account for that park? I say a handful of years ago, I think it was probably 14, when some of us at EMS had some younger kids. And that was kind of one of the places of choice, but as you said, there were some older equipment, we've had to remove it. But we tried to help buy, park equipment for that, and I don't think anybody realizes how expensive the smallest item isn't a couple $100, it's $10,000.
Yep.
But, again, I can only speak as chairperson of the board, you know, if there is an escrow, we do reach out and do some of that community stuff. We are 501c3, you know, we do put back in. You know, last year alone, we wrote up $529,000 for free service to the community of Clinton County and surrounding areas. So, the question was, is there an escrow that people would donate to help, you know, build that fund to maybe help offset?
There is
Some.
We have a fund for Hoberman that is an endowment.
Okay.
Individuals interested can contribute to that endowment to add to it through the community foundation. The city has its own fund for Hannah to receive donations into. It's not an endowment from a family or anything, but we do have an account that when people make donations towards Hannah Park, that does go into there. I think right now it's less than $200. But when people do make donations, it does go into that. The city invests that. It does get money through investment. Obviously not a lot at that amount, but it isn't financially in a position to make procurement itself.
Yes.
If I may, I did hear, I think that final decision does not have to be made until August 4th. Unfortunately, that is inaccurate. I need a decision tonight on a project that you would like to select.
I don't have the time.
So I do apologize.
There's no your supervisor.
You can call time.
No pressure.
Keeping in mind, this is funding for 2025. You're not going to see the funds until spring or summer of 2026 with the construction season of 2027.
Well, I stand by what I said here. If we have other funding means to take care of those paving things that I think are pretty important, then I don't mind shifting back towards the Hannah Park thing. And, you know, because I think that those things need to be done. Everybody drives on the road, so. Take care.
Well, I agree. If this funding wouldn't be happening essentially to get done until 2027, I think that we need to look at the EMS and the citizens projects from our general capital improvement project funds, so they can have it like.
Money as far as the.
Yeah, and that, because then if we did that, we'd be able to do Hannah Park and Reed Street and still have a little bit of money that we could put towards one of the other paving projects.
If you. I'm not sure what the detailed bid prices are, quote estimates, I should say, that Jared used. But if you did 4th, 3rd, and race simultaneously, like Steve said, you would save money off of what is quoted here. The city also is in the position to be able to allocate the square footage if it's its own project. If something is stormwater, have stormwater pay for it. That can be lumped into liquid fuels. If it's sewer or water would pay for it. That is not a liquid fuel, so that would save more money and could make all 3 of these projects really feasible with next year's allocation of liquid fuels, plus the estimated, hopefully, 20,000 that's left this year after Sunset Pines is completed with phase 3. So I do think you could do 4th, 3rd, and race out of liquid fuels 2026 allocation. As long as it isn't $29,810 to EMS. You would probably find a common figure for the bay floor and EMS that could be allocated into next year's budget from the amount that you transfer at the end of every year in the budget to the capital projects fund. It would just kind of be making that decision sooner than later. You usually don't make those decisions till during the course of the fiscal year, but you can add that in, and that would pay for both of those out of next year's budget instead of waiting until, I mean, the 2023 money we haven't spent yet from CDBG.
Right.
And it's 2025, so it is a bit of a wait. If your floor really does need to be done, and if you're,
We can, I mean, we're good if we wait until next year, we can make that work.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, is that we're shifting towards the Hannah Park thing now, right?
Yes, I always was, but.
Well, I know, but we had some essentially the other way.
Why do we have to list the paving in 3 separate sections? Because they're 3 separate streets. Why can't we lump that project into one project? And then cut down on the environmental review might be a little higher. And so will the Davis Bacon, but that should eliminate that duplication of $5,500 every time we want to do a street. Well, and they're right beside each other. Why don't we make it one project for paving? And then that saves you, almost $20,000.
You are correct, they could be lumped together. I wrote them out as they were presented, but it would be one flat charge.
But how much money are we totally dealing with here?
Your total allocation,
Yeah.
you have 257,438.
Right, so Steve, I mean, you know, if we're gonna be doing Hannah Park, that's $150,000 gone, so.
Sure.
You're not gonna be doing the other paving things out of CDBG if you do. You know, so why even get down that road?
Well, we could put, if we lump them all together, we could put 100,000 towards those paving projects.
that does make it more difficult
Does it make it more difficult?
with liquid fuels and with CDBG.
We federalize the
You're
entire project.
mixing those.
Okay, I did not realize we could mix funding sources in that way.
You can, it just makes it more difficult.
It does. In CDBG, if you partially fund all 3 streets, we cannot begin to even think about moving forward until all funds would be in hand.
Right, and we would have things.
So then it could take.
Alright, so out of the 250,000, you said, right? There's $150,000 gone. Where are we looking at the other 100,000? Are we gonna look at? They said about possibly waiting because for how long that money comes, what do you wanna do there?
I think
Joe-
with what you said is.
Joel, can I want to,
Sorry, no, sorry.
I just want to ask, and I heard Greg say that we push back Sunset Pines again, and that we move liquid fuels money towards roads next year instead of the next. What phase of Sunset Pines are we in?
3A,
Out of.
originally it was 6. Parks broken off.
Oh, what?
Her fan, look up here.
I'm not in my, Greg, I'm not in my regular seat. I'm in South Carolina.
Got it. So, Sunset Pines is a 6 phases. However, it's really heavy at the beginning on stormwater. And so that's the first 3 phases. That's what we're in now. The remaining phases, like the very end of Hemlock, that's just paving. Most of what's left is really just paving, not the heavy cost of stormwater installation. And so if you drive up there right now, you'll see the majority of it is actually repaved. And the majority of the stormwater infrastructure that needed to be put in has put in. This just about completes 3A, completes the heavy stormwater infrastructure that needs to be put in. The rest, even if you go beyond where we are on Hemlock, you'll notice the rest of the street is pretty well paved till you get to the very end of it. And that still needs to be paved. But there are still some streets that need to be paved, but they aren't as costly because of the lack of stormwater.
The main goal of that project was to get the stormwater drainage taken care of, to stop the damage
Right.
that was occurring on a regular basis. And so that part, for the most part, is taken care of.
Right.
You know,
With
so
this year.
it's not the emergency feeling that we had when we started the project.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I just, because I'm thinking we've got to deal with streets, we've got to deal with roads, parks are wonderful. They're a nice thing for the community, but it's so hard to find a balance between these things but if we are that far along in Sunset Pines and we feel like maybe putting that off for a year isn't going to damage the streets any further, then I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you. Brian, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
Yeah,
you're fine. We will, obviously, we will graciously accept whatever the city decides to do, obviously. We want that partnership, and whatever you feel best from the sounds of it. The funds wouldn't be available until 27 anyway, so realistically, if you knew what the discussion has been, we would probably see that funding sooner.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Are we allowed to put more into a project than what the estimate is?
Yes, we
Okay.
have to have the estimate.
Here's what I'm
reflect
gonna just throw out for discussion. We did the park, it's 159.5. We did Race Street 60, that's 219. The EMS and the fire company projects through general fund. And then we look at liquid fuels for 2 streets. Because there's nothing that goes with 159.5 for a park. Everything puts us over except for Race Street. So if we increase the park, which would help with the match for DCNR, and just do those 2 projects to spend our 254, and the other ones we jiggle as we see fit, as we need them. That's just a suggestion.
Clarify that for me. You're looking at it.
If you do the park at 159.5, and you do Race Street at 60,075, comes to 219.5. So increase a park allocation up to that 254 or 139. So it'd be another 40,000, 40 something, 45 for the park. Because once you have a project, we have all these years that I've been here, we've reallocated unused funds. And switch funds to other as long as the project's listed, you can jiggle those figures, right? So that would be my suggestion, to dump the balance into the park as a holding pattern and.
So if I can clarify,
Okay,
a little more.
I may be fragmented on that.
Yeah, it's all right. You're suggesting we do the Race Street improvements at 60,075,
Yeah.
and the balance of it go to the park.
Yes,
Yeah.
the park, Race, and the
Because
balance.
that's just an easier way of envisioning. And we find the other ways of funding
Sooner,
those things sooner.
come sooner than
And
2007.
the other 2 streets through liquid fuels. Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, that's,
Do you want to make a
I'm
motion
not
to that?
open for discussion, but I will make a motion.
Right, and then we can
That's
do this.
amenable to everybody to.
So we have a motion to do it that way.
Second that.
A second the motion, any discussion on that? Discuss it, but in case anybody wants to add anything. All right, call for the vote.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Brandon.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes,
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes, I want to congratulate council, honestly, that was a good discussion.
That was a really great discussion.
Well, we don't want to do all that. Cause it wasn't easy, and it's gonna get harder, it's gonna get harder. Okay, 5C, the home program monitoring response, I'm not sure how much we talked about this. We did a little bit last time, not. I had received a letter from DCD about our program. And worked with CEDACOG and having to respond to that. Go ahead.
So, CEDACOG administers our home program, which was a 2020 application. And we are still working through projects now. I'm not exactly sure how many homes we have made it through, but we need 2, 3 more to totally expend the funds. CEDACOG was monitored, as I mentioned, by DCED earlier this year, and we received a letter noting the findings for the program. We are required to respond to that letter and address those findings. The letter included in your packet is a response to DCD asking for an extension. We asked in cooperation with CEDACOG for an additional 60 days to meaningfully respond, and that would put the proposed deadline to September 10th of 2025. The original deadline, well, the letter was sent June 10th, and the original deadline was July 10th. So we have an extension there, and I'm working closely with CEDACOG to address that. We'll just go from there. I know that, and Larry can speak more to this, we are not the only community that has received findings that were under CEDACOG's jurisdiction for the home program. I will recognize for Angie's benefit, the CDBG program is kind of separate from the home program, so we're happy to have Angie here. And the home division at CEDACOG has been revamped, which I think has caused some of the the issues coming to light. So, and Mayor, I'll turn it over to you as well.
Findings happen. It's not everyone all the time what they do, and it's not about slapping anybody's wrist. It's about making sure we're covering all the bases for what we're required to do. When the upper governments give out money, they put rules to it for a reason, because the taxpayers get all kicked off if it's not spent well. And so they pointed out a couple places that could have been done better, and working with us to correct that so that this doesn't happen again. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Anything else on that? Okay. The 2025 6-month budget update.
So for council's information, it was also provided to the press in the packets that they received. This is the 6-month budget to actual update for city council. Couple items of note: 82% of all real estate taxes this year were paid in full during the discount period. That's an increase from our traditional, which is right around 75 to 80%, but still exceptionally high for any municipality. Because council has offered since 2020 the 4 payments at face value, the city has seen its overall collection rate go from about 87% to more than 95% each year, which is phenomenal, which is people paying in the year that it's owed. Across the spectrum, the city's wages and benefits are slightly below 50% for the year, and the expenditures for operations and maintenance are also averaging about 50%. Obviously, there are a couple areas that have gone over, like winter maintenance, which is something that you can predict, but not exactly. But also we have areas that have gone under as well. The airport and water fund continue to act deficiently. With the water fund, July will be the first bill at 100% of the new rate. The last 2 quarters or 2 months worth of bills were sent out and had proration. So for the rest of the year, we'll see a larger increase in the water revenue than we saw in the first portion of the year. The airport fund continues to be deficient. So far this year, we have only realized 45% of the budgeted revenue. And that includes the busiest month, which is the fly-in. And then the current year expenditure so far is 60%, which are obviously greater than half the year. That'll be available on the city's website for people to review as well. The 6-month budget to actual does not show individual line items in the publicly available one, but it does show breakdown by department and then totals for wages and benefits for each department and operations and maintenance total.
Any questions? All right. 5E, consideration of resolution number 2025-21.
This is for council's consideration for the July, application to Penvest, the Pennsylvania investment firm that council will borrow money from, if approved, for the final construction of the raw water transmission main and the installation of the 2 wells in Youngdale, as well as the replacement of the master pressure control vault and piping system around that. So all in all, it also is included to reimburse the city for the money that was spent for the emergency water supply, which was previously approved by Penvest to be part of this application. In all, the city will be requesting $8.8 million from Penvest. Obviously, this is a project that, like most water projects, about 40 to 50% of that, depending on the year, will be reimbursed to the city by Suburban Water Authority, who benefits from the infrastructure improvements to the raw water.
Do I have a motion?
The resolution.
Is that a second?
Yeah, Charlie, sorry.
That's all right, I didn't hear you, you know.
Almost, yeah.
So I
Yeah,
didn't,
well.
they definitely didn't.
I'm getting well.
All right, we have a motion and a second with 40 questions on that. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Brandon.
Yeah.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson. Mayor Law.
Yes. You guys are like whispering.
I
I know I'm half deaf, but I'm
Second
not.
years are done.
Okay, 5F, consideration of appointment of Berkheimer as city's collector of local services tax, business privilege tax.
As all local real estate tax payers are familiar, Berkheimer is the collector of real estate tax on behalf of city council. At its regular meeting on the 30th of June, the Clinton County Tax Collection Committee, which oversees the collection of earned income tax, also voted to appoint Berkheimer to be its collector of earned income tax starting with the next fiscal year. The council discussed in January of this year at its regular meeting that was something that the tax collection committee was likely to do, was seek out requests from other entities to collect its taxes in order to make sure it was getting the best rate. And council was agreeable to have me collect quotes from other suppliers or providers. Currently, for council's information, it collects local services tax. That itself is every individual who works within the city limits pays $1 per week in a tax to the city of Lock Haven, and business privilege tax, which is a 0.5% of the gross sales of particular types of businesses. They pay that to the city as well. So for Keystone Central, the current fee that Keystone Central School District's tax office is charging the city for the collection of those taxes is 5% of the tax paid, including postage. For Berkheimer, for local services tax, they gave a quote of 1.75% for both the current and the delinquent plus postage, and Keystone Collections gave 1.75% for current fee and delinquent of 0 plus postage. For business privilege tax, Keystone Central again charges 5% for both current and delinquent, and that includes postage. Berkheimer gave a quote of 2.25% for both current and delinquent business privilege tax plus postage, and Keystone Collections gave an amount of 3% for current as their fee for collection and 6% for delinquent plus postage. I would note that having local services tax for the city, if you are the collector of that, you now know every business that operates within the city limits. Those are also the businesses that are subject to business privilege tax. So having both gives that cross-reference to make sure no one's getting lost in one or the other. Earned income tax also gives you the ability to know where people are employed, because it doesn't matter where you work. If you live within the city limits, you pay earned income tax to the city. So that is another threshold of check that can be done if you use the same supplier for those taxes as well. But for council, the recommendation would be to go with Berkheimer for local services tax and business privilege tax, and to have the ordinances updated and brought before council for your consideration publicly to make that change.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I will second.
Motion for a second. Questions or comments on that motion? Yes, sir.
In looking over the information, I saw that the litigation fees were given for Berkheimer, but there's no list of litigation fees for the other one that you're not considering. Not knowing those, how do we know Berkheimer is the best deal? The litigation seems like it could get quite pricey.
Sure. Right, since you're making a recommendation, yes, sir.
Sure, litigation fees were not included with the proposals from Keystone Collection Group, so I can't speak to what those would be. And everyone had the same opportunity to provide as much information as they wanted. The litigation would be up to the city ultimately, whether it wanted to pursue litigation against anyone. That still has to be something, because it would be done in the city's name, that needs to go through the city. So the city has the ability to make that on a case-by-case decision. I can say, I mean, I've only been here 11 years, but I don't recall us going into litigation against any business privilege tax or local services tax entity. Usually when you bring to their attention that they failed to pay, it's usually an oversight on their behalf. And they make that right very quickly, because they're both relatively small taxes compared to state tax or federal tax.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Brandon.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes, thank you, Steve.
Very
Actually, curious at that. Okay, the opioid trust notification.
There's the past, the city has not been required, but has been welcome to submit how it spent its opioid trust distributions. And this year, the city was required to submit that information. We had always submitted it in the past voluntarily, but this year you'll now see the total amount of distribution that was approved, and also the allocation that is under consideration by the trust. They requested additional information on the safe green spaces and learning environments expenditure, which I did provide to them. That is money that council had discussed setting aside for lighting in especially parks that have adolescent populations that use them, to extend the playable time, not only like daylight hours, but time of year, because with only 20 inches on average of snow, you can actually use some of the park facilities like basketball things, even though it's cold out, but you can't if there's no light. So that is the money set aside to do those lighting projects, which is similar to what the city of Philadelphia did gain approval from the opioid trust to do. But ours is obviously on a much smaller level than Philadelphia's project. So we're still waiting review from them on that.
All right, any questions for the manager on that? We've already handled item H, so we will move on. Do you have any other unfinished business?
I have none, Your Honor.
Okay, so we're on new business 6A, consideration CSP proposal.
The CS McKee is the investment group for the city's portfolios for its pension funds, as well as the police death benefit fund. CS McKee spoke with the joint pension boards to get its recommendation on adjustments to the portfolio allocations. And so that's brought before city council. There are portions that will require amendments to city ordinances for both of the pension funds. So if council gives approval this evening, then those changes will be made to the ordinances to come back before you for your consideration and approval.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I will second.
Motion on the floor and a second. Any comments or questions? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Brandon.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. 6B, appointment of the PML Legislative Liaison.
Council was provided this information. This is a single point of contact that the Pennsylvania Municipal League is interested in each municipality providing, who can be the direct contact when it comes to legislative action and reaching out to the other council members to get their response and input, and then respond on behalf of the municipality.
Anyone want to make a motion as to who that should be?
Move that, Steve fill that position.
I currently sat on the legislative committee from the board. So, and when I get something, I usually do pass it on to Greg. It's mostly surveys right now, so where they're leading with this is, if somebody comes out with a bill that PML supports, they would like us to support it also, or if they don't like the bill, they would like us to discuss it and say, you know, so it's just a pass-through position. Sure. And don't forget, I only doing that till December 30th.
Do I have a second to the motion?
I will second that.
Motion on the floor and a second. Any questions or comments? Steve already kind of addressed it, but if somebody has any questions? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Brandon.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. 6C, request from the Clinton County Water Filtration Authority.
I'll give a little sniglet here, and then any members of the subcommittee that want to talk and fill in more information, but there are currently 3 requests before council that you've been provided. The subcommittee of council has been meeting with the city attorneys, but also themselves, and discussing those issues about some of the agreements that need to be clarified and amended. The subcommittee has asked for a meeting between itself and any members of council that want to attend, I suppose, and suburban authorities sometime during the week of July 14th to the 18th. Greg Mays, who's the manager of Suburban, is checking with them to find out what day and time would be good, and we'll get back to us hopefully soon. That would put Suburban and hopefully the city subcommittee on the same page to bring the kind of unified changes that need to be done before council for its consideration at its July 21st meeting. So that all of that can be cemented before the end of the month, which is when everyone would like everything buttoned up. So
Yep. Okay, thank you. Any other new business?
I have none, Your Honor.
Okay, we have the FYI reports authorities. Anybody have any more other committees they'd like to bring forward? No one? All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
I need a motion to